Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to the show. The Atheist Experience is live November 2nd.
I just sent a rather scathing email to the CFI Austin Yahoo group.
Okay.
Because there was a post on that group today, this mailing list today, talking about how the State Board of Education, which, as a lot of you may know, is run by a guy named Dan McElroy, who is a young Earth creationist, appointed by Rick Perry to run this group, and they have loaded this thing down with just about almost half of the State Board of Education are creationists of the old school, you know, Creation Week and Adam and Eve and all the rest of it. And so there are hearings coming up again, and the public will be invited to speak at these, and you can sign up to speak. And I don't know exactly. I looked at the websites, some of the websites that would have that information up to date. I don't think the exact. I couldn't find, for example, on the Texas Freedom Network website, if the actual sign-up page, when the date is for these hearings. I don't know that information yet. If I find out that information, I will immediately post something to the Atheist Experience blog about it. But what disappointed me was that the immediate reactions, just the first few people to respond to that post on the CFI list, were of a very defeatist attitude. And these were people whom I would not have expected to take that attitude. These are, one's a science teacher, very respectable people, and folks who could, if they really wanted to, give the creationists as good as they get, and more so, taking the attitude of, why bother? I'm not going to waste my time. They don't listen anyway. It's pointless. I'm not, I just want to stay home. I'm not going to take time out of my schedule to talk to a bunch of people who are, not even going to listen, and it's not going to do any good, and da-da-da. And I just was like, whoa, wait a second. All right, I know that this is a frustrating fight. It is frustrating in the 21st century.
Yeah, that we're still having this discussion.
Yeah, I mean, let alone that they're stoning children to death on the other side of the planet. But over here, we're still having to, defend modern ideas and modern science, against 19th century beliefs.
Right.
Before, right? I know that it is frustrating and wearying to have to, get on that horse and ride down that trail again. But the point is, what else can you do? If you're not willing to defend science, you have to defend, facts and the truth and reality against these politically motivated people who do not want to have science, A, inconveniencing their religious beliefs, and B, they do want the pro-science side to roll over and play dead and just hand them the victory they're looking for.
Right.
And that's the attitude that I was unfortunately seeing today on the mailing list. And I had to send a really, pretty brutal letter back saying, hey, whatever happened to principle here? Can we all look that word up? The point is that is what the creationists would love on the SBOE. All of the, the pro-science side to just give up and stay home and say, oh, it's all useless. They're all fundies anyway. They're not going to pay attention to us. But you know what? The people who are willing to stand up for science, they kept that one Young Earth organization. I think it wasn't Answers in Genesis. It was a different one. But the Institute for Creation Research,
ICR, that's right.
Recently in Texas, wanted to get approved to give out master's degrees.
Yeah.
And
well, they can give out master's degrees, but just not in science.
Right. They wanted to give out master's degrees.
Yeah, you can't be accredited to do that.
Right. They wanted that accreditation, and they didn't get it. And the reason they didn't get it was because people who are real scientists and supporters of real science came out. Guys like Steve Schaefersman, fantastic fellow with Texas Citizens for Science. You go to texscience.org, is that organization's website. Great folks. Came out and said, look, this is not a scientific organization. These are pseudoscientists. They have a politically motivated religious point of view they're trying to promote here. They're not fit to do what they want to do. They have no qualifications to do what they want to do. And this is just all political shenanigans.
Right.
And so ICR, got sent home to go file their lawsuits or do whatever they do when they don't get their way, right? But the point is, yes, it does work to speak out against this. You can get this idea, oh, the religious right's in charge, nothing's ever going to change. But it does. I spoke at the hearings in 2003. They were trying to get ID sort of shoehorned into the science textbooks in 2003, and I was there to speak there. We had Russell Glasser was there, Don Baker came, ACA was well supported. I think a couple other folks. Let me see if I can remember who from our side turned up. But But a good turnout, and then a bunch of the science faculty at the University of Texas turned
Right.
up, and a whole heap of creationists who had been sort of trucked in by the Discovery Institute.
From
you-
Waco or someplace.
No, they brought in William Dembski turned up.
Oh, okay.
Michael Behe was there. Jonathan Wells, like the sort of the ID triumvirate was there.
Yeah.
And a bunch of DI people were there. And ultimately, yeah, the vote was to keep the textbooks, correct.
Yeah.
And even though, of course, Dan McElroy, who was part of that, and his little partner in crime, Terry Leo,
Yeah.
the woman
Yeah.
who is as dumb as a sack of hammers, and and who machinated everything to where all the media was there.
Yeah.
At the beginning, she got the speakers front-loaded with all the creationists.
Right.
Like the first
it-
dozen or so
that it's-
speakers.
Yeah,
Right.
that it's late by the
Right.
time the...
Right, and
the
then all
real
the TV
science
cameras
people
went
get there,
home,
yeah.
but there were still several hours of testimony going. I think it went until like past midnight. I ended up speaking around 10:30 at night. And I'm like, okay, everyone's tired, and I didn't stay here for 6 or 7 hours all day just to like give my little 3-minute thing and be ignored. So I gave, I gave a really sort of a boisterous little speech there, and it got a good reception. And the point is, you can do it. You can stand up, and it does matter to be noticed. And it really, really disappointed me to see people on the CFI Austin list take this, defeatist attitude of, well, I don't care, and
Well,
no,
And,
no,
and
I'm sorry.
besides, I mean, you can get up there and talk and make them look stupid. And it's really not that hard, because they are stupid.
Well, yeah.
So,
What
you
I
know.
did was I read back actual quotes from guys like Jonathan Wells,
Yeah.
where Jonathan Wells in one of his books talks about how he decided to go for a second PhD because he wanted to devote his life to defeating Darwinism, and this was a
Yeah.
result of talks that he had with Father. You know who Father was? It's the Reverend Moon.
Oh.
Jonathan Wells was a Moonie. Okay, just stuff like that. You have William Dembski basically, because remember the whole sales pitch for ID is no, this isn't religious. This is an alternate scientific theory, and then
Yeah.
you can just point to you can just open up one of Dembski's books and talk about how where he says any scientific ideas that leave Jesus out have to be considered invalid.
Right.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
well, there you go. I mean, you just
Well-
you undermine them with their own words, and at that point, your work is done.
And they've published the wedge document, so that's available online. You can
Yeah.
read it. And
Yeah,
Yeah.
that got brought up quite a bit. So,
yeah, you know what the agenda is here, and it's not science.
So I was very, very glad that Chuck brought that up, because now I keep getting flashed here. This little notice: the Atheist Community of Austin put out a voter's guide where they sent a list of questions to politicians running for office, the selection cycle, and they got a bunch back, and apparently one of the questions had to do with such scientific issues like the age of the Earth. Am I correct there? Okay, I'm getting a nod. But that's really all I'm being told. So apparently there are politicians out there who have correct scientific attitudes, and others who don't,
Yeah.
and quite a few who do not, and then probably some who didn't even answer the questionnaire at all.
Yeah.
So that's fairly handy, and I do believe, I'm just going to wait to see if I get a nod on this, that the results of those voters' guide, the answers have been put on the Atheist, yes they have, Atheist Community of Austin website, the URL of which is spidered across the bottom of your
Yes.
screen.
So
there.
if your frontal lobes are functioning, you can use this voter's
See, I
guide.
just sort of, we communicated through
Yeah.
gestures and nods, and I got it all down.
Yeah. See, there you
So
go.
we do that kind of thing.
But if your frontal lobes are still functioning, you can go to the website, take a look at the results, and use that information to inform your voting decision if you haven't already voted.